Hi, I'm Laura Lawton with Lawton Printing Services. Welcome to Candidate Confidential. We're happy to have you join us. We're happy to join Spokane Talks online for this important civic service. The Lawton team has been serving the Inland Northwest for over 77 years. What keeps us motivated is the continuous evolution of our company to better serve the clients we work with every day. We are also fortunate to have so many people willing to step up to serve our communities. Being a candidate and civil servant is too often a thankless job. I know you join me in thanking these forward-thinking individuals for their dedication to us all. With that, I thank you for taking the time to learn more about the people who want to lead our communities. Enjoy the debate and give Lawton a call for any of your marketing, printing, or mailing needs. Thank you.
Welcome to Spokane Talks Online, Candidate Confidential. I'm Rich Cowan, and I'm here with two gentlemen here running for City Council in Spokane Valley, Chris Jackson and Rod Higgins. And we'll get right into the issues right after this message.
Proposition 2 is not about politics. It's about protecting Spokane's economy.
I'm opposed to Proposition 2.
I'm opposed to Prop 2.
I'm opposed to Proposition 2.
Proposition 2 just doesn't make sense.
I am opposing Proposition 2.
I'm against Proposition 2.
I'm opposed to Proposition 2.
I'm opposed to Prop 2 because we have to protect Spokane's economy.
Well, welcome back. We're going to get right into the issues. So I'm going to start with Chris. Let's talk a little bit about law enforcement. And is that a big issue for you in this election?
Oh, 100% definitely. I want to stress the importance of any solution that involves law enforcement, that involves whether or not the citizens feel safe. And like it or not, crime is one of those issues that transcends city borders. And our neighbors are hurting at this point in time. I'm, of course, referring to Spokane County and the city of Spokane. If you ask the sheriff what's going on with the department right now, you're going to hear pretty quickly that he was asked to cut their budget by 7%, and they're at the point where they can't cut anymore. They're going to have to lay off deputies. And fewer deputies on the streets means fewer deputies to go around. So when Spokane Valley hits negotiations, it's going to be harder to ask for more officers if they don't exist. And so he was asked by commissioners that have promised time and time again that they're going to put initiatives to the voters that are going to help out, and that hasn't happened yet. So we're in an interesting conundrum with how do we help our neighbors and how do we help ourselves through that process. And so one of the ways I think we do that moving forward is we make negotiations easier for the people to do their job. I'm of course referring to the sheriff's contract. And so some of the specific examples that come from that is we're stipulating what color the cars have to be, we're stipulating what color the uniforms have to be, we're adding patches to those uniforms. And the sheriff's been pretty clear that these are things that make it harder for the deputies to do the work that they want to do, and it's going to cost the taxpayers money. Standardization of that process is going to save money. So when we talk about the best thing moving forward, I think those are the things we should be focusing on.
Okay, great. Rod, what?
In a city such as ours, we're a contract city. We're charged with three things: public safety, roads, and infrastructure. The infrastructure being, of course, parks and things that make quality of life better. Okay, back to public safety. Right now, the sheriff's department is having difficulty attracting sufficient people to fill their ranks. That, of course, filters down into the number of people that should be policing the valley. Now, Chris brings up an interesting point, albeit a very minor one, which is color of cars and stuff like that. One of the things we wanted in the contract, recently negotiated for 5 years, by the way, with 3, I believe, 1-year extensions, is that these are not just okay, we're going to stop and do all of this stuff. It is, as we roll into new things, they will be added. Do they cost money? Not really. Not in the manner in which people would say, well, you're stuck with that cost right now. It's not an upfront cost. It's very much like the military does when they change uniforms. They roll into it. Okay. As far as crime in the county, in the city, I think we do as good a job as anyone else does. We're very proud of our police force. And let's put something to bed right away that may have come up in the last election 2 years ago. The city of Spokane Valley is not interested in its own police force. Okay? It is simply not. That was a bogus issue then. It's a non-issue now.
Okay. Chris, would you agree with that?
Well, I certainly agree that we should be 100% proud of our police force, but I would also suggest that related to the point of not wanting Spokane Valley's own police force, we spend money on consultants that investigate these things, and those also have price tags attached to them. So if we're not interested, then we shouldn't be pursuing those types of decisions because they do ultimately cost money. And even if the point of changing the cars or changing the uniforms is minute, the important part is to make sure that you have a strong relationship with the person you're contracting with. And the more things we do that make it harder for them to do their job or things that they're upset with, those make those negotiations harder in the future because it suggests that we're not willing to work with them as closely as they'd like.
Okay. Now, Rod, you mentioned that there was a staffing issue with the county sheriff office. Why is that? Why are they having a hard time finding people?
I don't think that's limited to the sheriff's department specifically. I think businesses in general are having trouble finding workers, qualified people. And it is especially acute in law enforcement where you've got so many other criteria that you have to meet.
Mm-hmm. Is it a funding issue, salaries and benefits and things like that? Or?
To some degree, I don't believe that's a major part of it.
Uh-huh.
I think simple qualifications like physical qualifications, it's very difficult to find people who meet physical and mental qualifications for being a law enforcement officer.
Sure.
You don't just pick them up off the street.
Right. That's absolutely true. Chris, would you have changed that at all? What would you suggest?
That's a hard question to tackle because it's one of those issues that's starting to plague cities nationwide. Cops are having trouble recruiting other police officers, and it could be for a variety of number of reasons that we haven't figured out yet. Mm-hmm. But I do share Rod's belief that it is something that needs to be addressed, and one of the things I think we could start by doing, and these are very minor decisions, is working on small community improvements that help out with that. One of the things that we've actually done pretty well in Spokane Valley is have a SCOPE program. So we have a volunteer group that goes around and helps monitor streets. And if you have a community that takes care of its own, I think it's easier to say, hey, would you like to come be a part of this community? That's one of the selling points we can use.
Okay, great. Let's move on to taxes and infrastructure, things like that, Rod.
Okay.
What are we taxed enough? Are we taxed too much? Where do you think we are right now?
You can walk down the street and ask anyone that question, and you'll get a wide variety of answers.
Sure.
In the Valley, we generally are very low taxed, okay? We have not, for instance, taken the automatic property tax increase allowed by state law. This will be the 9th year in our proposed budget that we will not have done that. We do have a problem with road maintenance, however. That is that a few years back, I believe 5, we instituted a telephone tax at 6%. Well, from the day that that was installed, that telephone tax has been declining, as you might imagine.
Sure.
Landlines are going away. And yes, we do tax iPhones and stuff like that, but folks are going even more and more to texting and stuff, which is not taxed. So we have a problem. That tax is declining. It continues to decline. There's no bottom in sight. So what we need is a replacement that is predictable and constant. And folks say, well, hey, we can grow out of this. We can take it out of the general fund. Well, when you do things like that, in good years, you're in great shape. Tall cotton. When you have an economic downturn, then you start prioritizing, and roads sometimes get the short end.
Right. Chris?
Yeah, a little personal background. I came from a very poor family growing up, and when I say this, it's the type of family where the parents had to decide which nights they were going to eat dinner because they had to give food to the kids, and so when it eventually became a single-person household, it became even tighter. I'm not really a big fan of taxation because I understand the frustrations of people who are already struggling to get by having to give anything back, but I also am pragmatic in the sense that I realize roads need to be built and plows need to come at the winter and infrastructure changes need to be made. And so moving forward, the hard truth is that any form of taxation has to come as an initiative to the people first, because they are ultimately the stakeholders in where that money is going to be spent. And further, any tax increase has to be stipulated where it's going to go. And I know we have some good options for what that's going to look like in the future. But I think the council found firsthand by bringing the 6% utility tax issue up last election night that if the public doesn't have a heads up, that's already the wrong way to start off with that negotiation.
Right now, I believe that you have the budget's pretty solid right now. You have a surplus. We have a fairly strong economy. What philosophy would you have? Would you retain some of that for a rainy day account or spend it on infrastructure right now? What do you think, Rod?
We are doing both.
Okay.
We have a rainy day account, and we also have some things we need to get done, such as rail crossings in the valley. You're well aware that 2 railroads bisect our city, right down the middle, okay? And you see on Argonne what can be done when you can get cars away from crossing railroad tracks, okay? And we intend to do that, focusing first on Barker, then bring it back to Pines, and then eventually to Park. Oh, and don't forget, across Bigelow Gulch, coming down on Forker Road, joining with Sullivan, will be a whole new road bringing things from the north, traffic, which will then require us addressing that. But aside from the grade crossing at Barker Road, we have the entirety of Barker Road from north to south that is in not good shape. It is not up to the task of handling the traffic that is put on it.
Sure.
Yeah. So we've got lots to do.
Okay, great. Chris?
I think we need to take an even more proactive approach. One of which is when you tackle a project like the Barker Freeway grade separation, it costs a lot of money, and that's money that the city doesn't have. And I was told a story by some past council members that I think it was about '06 when Olympia passed a gas tax. And they basically said that, if you can get one of your 2 state representatives to support this, we'll kick in $20 million for that project. Lo and behold, both of the state representatives said no, and it was a tax that was going to pass regardless. And so turning down those opportunities are only going to hurt Spokane Valley in the long term. Further, we might also look into providing what's called a transportation benefit district. And the cool part about this district, as opposed to other means of soliciting money, is that money doesn't go to the general fund. That money specifically goes to issues that surround transportation. Okay. And it's a much easier sell, and it's much more reassuring to people to tell them, hey, not only is this money going here, but we don't have the ability to move it anywhere else. And I think those types of decisions are going to make voters much more comfortable.
What do you say about that, Rod?
I'm sorry, but I don't think so. A transportation benefit district is another taxing entity.
Okay.
And you'll have commissioners on it who must be voted on. And the money goes, you have administrative overhead, you have all kinds of things. It could be fitted, and the city council would be the actual district administrators. That's kind of a long shot. But if it goes outside of that, now you're paying people, as I say, who it's like sending our money to the state for collection. They take a fee and send it back to you. You never, ever break even. It looks good. It really doesn't work that well. And I think when the folks are faced with another taxing entity, I don't think it's going to fly.
Okay, Chris?
Oh, a good follow-up. I understand the concerns with establishing an entity like that, but I would also suggest that anytime you have conversations with lawmakers in Olympia, one of the things they tell you is that we'd like to give you more money, but you're not using the tools that we've given you to make these issues better. And so I would look to situations that include our negotiating power when we do try to bring money to the city, and this could be one of those ways.
Okay. Rod?
Well, the part about our legislators not responding, okay, I'd like to address that one specifically because I was sitting in the room when a House member from the legislature was literally extorting us, threatening us with that. If they don't come on board, you get nada. Well, your response to that probably wouldn't be very positive, would it? Well, it turned out not to be. And the fact that our folks held up that funding, no, that's not true. Okay.
Let's move on to vision. And Chris, I'll start with you first. Where do you see the Valley in 10 years from now? What's your vision for the city?
Also, as a brief introduction to this conversation, I recently had a friend visit from overseas, and it was sort of my job as the host to decide the things that I should show this person to really give them a feel for the community. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be great if we took them to Manitou and Riverfront Park and that giant red wagon and the garbage-eating goat? And it quickly became apparent as I started thinking about it that there are only a few things that I would take them to see in Spokane Valley. And so if I were to close my eyes and imagine what that place would look like in 5 years, it would be a thing that does more community events. I had the privilege of being at Valley Fest last weekend, and it was a phenomenal experience. And when I imagine Spokane Valley 5 years in the future, I imagine more community events. Our next Blooms Day, or our next Pig Out in the Park, or our next Hoop Fest could be down the road, and we need to do better jobs of soliciting input so we can attract that talent from the community to start hosting those events. And then in 10 years, those are events that people come from all over the US to see, and maybe even the world. And so if we're going to boost up that sales tax-based economy, we need to start investing in things that bring people here. And one of the ways I think we do that is we look for development opportunities in the Miraboo Point Park area. Because when you think of fine dining experiences, you also think of things that are on the Spokane River. And so places with a view that are going to attract people to spend a little bit more money are also things that we should be looking forward to in the future.
Okay, thanks. Rod, what's your vision down the road?
Our vision, my vision, is for, first of all, a further expansion of our industrial park.
Okay.
You've seen the announcement for Katerra, and we have another company that's going to give us a nice foothold into that more than doubling of our industrial park.
Wow.
Okay, that very well could launch the population of Spokane Valley over the $100,000 mark, 100,000 people mark. Excuse me.
That's okay.
The amenities that we're talking about, we are getting into place gradually. They don't happen overnight. Okay. And as a result, looking forward as to what our city would look like, I'm looking at our city hall as an anchor. We had a meeting last night with the library district. If the library could be across Sprague Avenue from that, that would be a tremendous center point, community center, and it would uplift that entire area. And so I see wonderful things in the future for the city of the Valley.
Great. Well, thank you. Now it's time for each of you to give about a 1-minute statement of your choice. And Chris, go ahead.
A big proponent of community. First and foremost and always, I prefer solutions that always start with the people first. And one of the things I think that candidates tend to do a terrible job of, especially as elected representatives, is representing those people's needs. And so one of the things I'm extremely passionate about is finding means to solicit that feedback. So when I make a decision, I know roughly how many people support that decision, because what I think and what I want to do are important, but at the same time, it's more important that I represent those needs. We have a lot of groundswell behind us, and most of the people that are running for elected position at this point in time are looking to solutions similar to the ones that I'm proposing, but they all have slight different variations to that vision. So I encourage everyone to give them all a look. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris. Rod?
Well, the city is a business. And no, it does not run like a regular business out there. It's considerably different. We run under restrictions set forth by state law to a great degree. However, one of the things that I have discovered is that it takes time to get into the swing of city business. You've got to learn a lot of things, how things operate. That setting behind the dais is a lot different than being in the front of the dais. And I would say simply that experience counts. Okay, this is my 5th year on city council. I'm into my 2nd year as mayor. And with that, I think I bring a wealth of business experience to that seat. Thank you.
Well, thank you both, gentlemen, for being with us today. Chris Jackson and Rod Higgins running for the position of City Council member for Spokane Valley. Thank you very much, and go out and vote.